Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. This is a viewer's requested video which will get repeated. So although it's a request for a video, it will generate possibly many. And it's basically just that, back to basics. Now, I don't profess to be a beginner's channel. Nonetheless, all growers are welcome. From those just starting out, perhaps that have just got one orchid that somebody gave them as a present or a gift or a birthday jobby or something like that, to those that have smallish collections that apparently seem to grow without them noticing. So where there was 2 or 3, now there's 5 or 6, and then there's 9 or 10, and then there's 20. You get the feeling? We've all been there. Some of us stopped it dead in its tracks, those are the sensible ones. Some let it run and now have big collections. That's me. I spent many years with just a few orchids lurking around the house, like houseplants, that sort of feeling towards them, not treating them as anything special as such. And then I got more into the whole thing and, well, see what happens. Right, so if we're going to go back to basics, what I plan on doing is picking on a genus or an alliance, potentially, to include several, and having a look at what I've got and any problems that I've encountered and the basic care that you can expect to have to do to keep those plants healthy and prolong their life. Because basically, if you think of what we're doing, we're taking tropical orchids, with the exception of the ones we're going to look at now, because they're a bit special, or different, and we're taking them into an environment that is alien to their native habitat. And we're going to try and keep them alive in an alien environment. You know, it's basically like taking somebody and sticking them on the moon without a spacesuit, basically. So we're going to have a look at what I call the humble Phalaenopsis. And I say that with a pinch of salt. Phalaenopsis orchids are perfectly viable orchids. They are very special in a lot of ways, from the mass-produced hybrids, most of them with no names, down to the individual species, of which there are a number of that come from a variety of habitats. That's important because some of those species are actually cooler growers and some are warm to hot growers. And when you get into the species, deviate from their happy place and they're not going to do very well. However, the hybrids have been bred, the mass-produced hybrids have been bred to tolerate a much wider variety of environments without going downhill at any great rate. However, some of them are still going downhill, it's just so slowly you don't notice. So let's have a look at some. I might get a chance to drink that. That's what's left of yesterday's bottle. Right, so what I've done is I've gathered some Phalaenopsis. I might have to move the camera back a bit. Yeah, we will. We'll go back a bit. We're going to look at each plant individually and discuss it and why I picked on it, basically. Is that somewhere near it? Yeah, that'll do. I'll just move it up a bit. That'll do. Right, so there we go. Why is that here? That's my systemic bug spray that I'm currently using. Yeah? Now, this is a problem because I use a systemic bug spray and on Phalaenopsis it doesn't work very well. But it's got two elements to its properties. It's systemic, it's supposed to soak into the plant and then kill biting insects that bite into the plant because it's inside waiting for them. In addition to that, it has a contact killing effect. That can work very well on Phalaenopsis, but the systemic bit doesn't work so well. So that's what I'm using currently. Now, I appreciate that in some countries you can't get systemic pesticides. In fact, in some countries you've got a job to get any pesticides at all. I'm going with what I can deal with in the UK. That's not very strong, that's not trade, that's not farming community quality. It's just about tolerable, but it's not brilliant. Right, so first of all we'll have a look at a typical store-bought, mass-produced Phalaenopsis. This is a large plant. What's that? 15, 16 inches across from tip to tip. The natural growth pattern of a Phalaenopsis is its leaves go out sideways, they're linear, and they don't deviate from that pattern unless they get light restricted access. So if I put this plant in a position where it had quite strong light coming in from the front and very little light coming from elsewhere, this new leaf would tip forward and it would do that. But under normal circumstances they are linear. They grow out from a centre point sideways. Their growth pattern is such that they produce roots from a stem in the centre. Leaves come out alternately from either side. They should be, under normal circumstances, each new leaf should be at least as big as the previous one, and if it's a younger plant growing on, potentially slightly bigger. What should not happen is each leaf gets smaller and smaller. If that's happening, there is something fundamentally wrong, but it's not a big deal yet. Right, roots grow down into, in this case, a barky type mix. It's whatever was in it when I bought it. Roots are large and fleshy on Phalaenopsis. There is this, I won't say it's a misconception because sometimes it's true, but it is said that when the roots are dry they're a silvery grey colour. When they're wet they're a greeny colour. So when they're a silvery grey colour it needs watering. When they're a greeny colour it doesn't need watering. However, if you've got a clear pot and the plant's been in there a while, all the roots are covered in algae. So they always look green. So careful with your watering. Try feeling the weight of the plant. Anyway, this is a mass-produced, store-bought. This came from Burnham's. Beautiful blooms, double spike on a plant that is strong and healthy. Take a good look at that plant. Take a good look at the two spikes and the number of blooms, because the chances are I will never reproduce that, because they're grown under perfect conditions to achieve that. I won't be able to do that. I can't do 14 hours of perfect daylight, full spectrum, 14 hours. I can't do 27, 28 degrees temperature during that 14 hours. Dropping down to 21, 22 degrees at night for whatever hours are left, 14 from 24, that's 10 I believe. And I can't produce trade feeds with appropriate growth hormones, etc. So I can't provide the perfect conditions. So I'm never going to grow a plant as good as that. I accept that. So what do? We get as near as we can. So I'm going to show you this one. Now all of my Phalaenopsis are currently being invaded by mealybugs. As I've said before, this particular spray doesn't do very well with Phalaenopsis because they don't absorb much, but it does have a contact ability. Now this plant is getting a good spray. It may soak in some of that, let's hope it does. So that's first basic care, is bug treatment. Get a systemic spray or get what I call a soapy wash spray, which kills on suffocation methodology. Something like SBK, Plant Invigorator and Bug Killer is the one that springs to mind. But if you use that type of preventative measure, you need to use it very frequently. But the beauty of it is it does no harm to the plant. Yeah? So anyway, why have I brought this one out? It's a little bit of an exception. It's got a variegation on the leaves. You see the yellow around the edge? That's unusual for Phalaenopsis. And it's got a bit growing out here. It's got a bit growing out here. Why has that happened then? This had a terminal spike on it when it was bought. In other words, the normal shape of the plant with the leaves going out either side, and it had a spike coming straight out of the middle of the plant. It's called a terminal spike for two reasons. One, because it's coming out of the terminal of the plant, and second, because it's normally the doom of the plant. Because unless the plant can produce some side shoots, it will cease to grow. So point one to avoid, look at your plant. Do not buy a plant with a terminal spike. Make sure the spikes come out from lower than the first two leaves. That's important. However, I kept this one to see what I could do with it. It's not doing brilliantly. It would do better if it didn't have the mealybugs. But it's still going, and I kept it simply so that I could show people how a plant would grow following a terminal spike. The original plant's terminal has gone. It's long since dropped its leaves and died. And what's left are the little side shoots. And that's probably a fair way off of blooming now. And eventually these two side shoots should be separated and potted up as individual plants. Not yet. They're too small. Right, size. Phalaenopsis can get quite big. This one came from my son. It was the first orchid and probably the last that he ever bought. And he put it in a jar, no drainage, no ventilation, no nothing. And he grew it in there for over 5 years. And then when he changed his accommodation, he couldn't keep it anymore, so he sent it to me to look after. And we had to smash the glass with a hammer basically to get it out. And we got it out, potted it up, and it's done. That rock is basically to stop it falling over. It's done a mass of roots. It's got an excellent root system. It's a healthy plant. It does get mealybugs here and there, but I keep on top of them. So that's the size of a big one. That's what they can do. Next we have what's called a mini phal. These are Phalaenopsis that are bred to be small. They produce often multiple spikes, but the spikes have many blooms, but they're not very large, but they're often very colourful, and they often have deep colours involved. Now this one is a mini phal. That's probably my healthiest Phalaenopsis plant. It's got 5 leaves, the latest of which is a good size, yeah? It's got a good root system with active roots, yeah? It was repotted a while ago into bark. It won't need repotting again for some time. And if you look at the way they grow, the roots come out from the central stem. These are monopodial orchids. They grow up a central stem under normal circumstances. And as they grow taller, the roots start shooting out from higher up the stem. Let's see what happens with age. Yeah? So that's a relatively young plant, and that's a mini Phalaenopsis. They are often sold like that as mini phals. They don't grow enormous, but they still are very attractive. You can get 3 of those where that last one we looked at was, and that could be 3 different types, 3 different colours, 3 different patterns instead of 1. These have merits. That's that. Now I'm going to show you my most unhealthy Phalaenopsis. This is absolutely covered in bugs. Do they look like mealybugs? No, they don't, and yet they are. This was treated when I watered it a couple of days ago, and all the adult mealybugs were taken off, and yet still there are 2 or 3 adult sized mealybugs on the underside of these leaves. So what am I going on about then? Those are the young mealybugs. Those are the crawlers. Those are the next generation. They do not have the protection of the adults with their waxy coating. These can be knocked down easily. Like this. Down in between the leaves, on the leaf joints, right down to the base of the plant as it goes into the media. Yep. So that's what happens with mealybug outbreaks. You knock off the adults, which are very visible, very easy to see, very easy to dispose of. You can rub them off, you can squish them, you can do all sorts of things to get rid of them, but it doesn't stop the outbreak of the next generation. So you need to deal with those. Now this is my most unhealthy plant. Seriously. Have a look at these leaves. They are limp. They are almost lifeless. They have no, what's the expression? They're not turgid. They are dehydrated badly. And if you come onto this side of the plant, the first 2 are in that state. And you have to get to here before you get a normal leaf, followed by this one. Over on the other side of the plant, again, this leaf is starting to go yellow. It will fall soon. The one above it is not turgid. The one above it, again, flippy floppy. The one above that is fine. And we have a new leaf growing. So the leaves that are okay on this plant are 1, 2, 3 and the new one. All the rest are going to drop in the not too distant future. We do have a reasonable root system starting to grow, and we have some new roots coming out from the stem in various places. Now as long as those new roots get down into the pot, this plant will recover. Right, so that's a look at some and their differences and bug treatment as we went along. We've already discussed, hang on, let's get back to me, my video. What was dinging then? Something rattled. I don't know what that was. Where's me, there it is. Right, so Phalaenopsis, perfect conditions, 28 degrees centigrade daytime, 14 hours full spectrum light, at the appropriate distance from the plants. You can look that up. These are not highlight orchids, but they like the right amount of light for the right amount of time. Unless you live in a sort of country where that exists naturally, then if you don't use artificial lighting, you're not going to achieve that. So you're going to fail at step 1. Step 2, These do not need high humidity. They're happy at around 60%. Now, in a lot of countries, that's the ambient humidity. And if it's the ambient humidity outside, it's probably the same in your home, unless you've got an aircon unit running, which will completely destroy that humidity. But yeah, 60–65% humidity is fine for these. Water when heading towards dryness, it's probably better not to let them get totally dry. But we do have exceptions. With those temperatures, those are perfect conditions. Well, what if you can't provide that? What if your home in the winter is down at 21–22 degrees with the heating on to keep you reasonably comfortable at those temperatures? And because your heating is on, your humidity is probably going to drop. So you've gone quite a long way away from the ideal conditions. What will happen to the plants? Because bearing in mind that probably is winter time, your amount of daylight or available light is going to drop right off. What's going to happen to the plants? They're going to slow right up, almost to a standstill. So they won't be producing many new roots, if any, or branching roots. They probably won't produce any new growths. But what also happens to Phalaenopsis, as those temperatures drop down from our nice summer temperatures, and we head into autumn, and we get cooler nights and probably cooler days. And that's exactly what they need to generate their spikes. Yeah? So those ideal conditions in the nurseries of 28 degrees C for 14 hours, they do that until they get a blooming sized plant. And then they plummet those temperatures, they shorten the amount of daylight hours, they change the type of feed that they give them, and up come the spikes, because they respond to that drop in temperature. Now, in the main, a lot of people in a lot of countries, these things will happen naturally. Yeah? It will happen as far as I'm concerned. My kitchen at the moment is not the warmest place, because I'm not doing so much cooking because it's hot. In this country it's too hot, and it's been too hot for too long. So I'm not doing a lot of cooking. I'm feeding like a sparrow at the moment, living off cheese and biscuits and fried eggs. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean I provide that extra heat in the kitchen. These plants live on the kitchen windowsill, which is the brightest light without any sun that I can give them. Faces directly north, so they don't ever get any sun through that glass. But they are right up against that window. That's bright light for the UK. However, come the autumn time, the amount of daylight hours is going to go and drop right down. And it's going to drop down from, in the summer period, 15+ hours, and it's going to start dropping down until we get into the winter, when it's down to less than 8 hours. That is not sufficient to keep these plants actively growing. So they'll stop. What happens when plants stop growing? You stop chucking feed and water all over them. If the plant's not growing, what's it going to do with the food? Yeah? And if you keep your plants soggy and wet in those cooler temperatures with much shorter daylight hours, the roots will rot. And that rot can get into the stem, and you'll find your leaves will just drop and your plant will die. So go steady. Think about your plant, think about the time of year, and think about what you're up to. Now, I've just put a lot of provisos and a lot of ifs and buts. Nonetheless, these are still some of the simplest orchids to grow in the home environment. They've been bred to do so. So take advantage of that. You can have a collection of Phalaenopsis orchids with most of the colours you can think of that orchids produce, from reds through to pinks, through the oranges, through to the yellows, through to the whites. They're all in there somewhere. There's purple as well. Don't be fooled by the blue ones that you see in the supermarkets. They have plant dye applied to the spikes which soaks up into the blooms. The blooms, if it ever reblooms, because that doesn't do the plant much good, it'll be white, I can assure you. You've bought a white orchid with a blue dye. It's not a blue orchid. And there are other orchids that now are getting that dye applied that's not blue. So you can get some deep pink or some medium pink that have had that process applied to them. And next time they bloom, when you get round to reblooming them, they'll be white. So that's the market that you're dealing with. Right, so basically, as we are doing a back to basics type video, Phalaenopsis, I know some good orchid growers who say, I can't grow them, they just die on me. I can't look after them, they're always keeling over. And a lot of it, I believe, is because they're growing them out in their greenhouses with their orchid collection, and they don't mix well with what's going on in that grow space. See, now at the moment in my grow space, my Phalaenopsis would do brilliantly out here. I could keep them away from the brightest light. They've got the high temperatures, they've got more than enough humidity, they get watered and fed well because they'd be actively growing, they'd do fine. But they can't stay out here in the winter. They can't go down to 12, 13 degrees for the night, which in the winter in this country is most of the day. Because there's not much daytime, is there? It's nearly all night time. And that's when the temperature's low. They wouldn't survive. They'd at least stop growing, and most of them would deteriorate. Quite honestly, Phalaenopsis shouldn't really go down below 18 degrees. You can get away with 15 to 16 degrees as long as it's not heavy duty and all day and all night. That's just too low. They come from warm climates, and the artificial environments which they are grown in for you to buy keep those temperatures up, so they're used to it, so they won't do well with cold temperatures. They don't like a draft. Definition of a draft: an airflow that is above and beyond what would normally occur. So if you walk past an open window and go, "Pwah," that's a draft. If you walk past an open window and go, "Oh, some nice fresh air," that's not a draft. That's fresh air. There is a difference. So there we go. Feed, they are renowned to be quite high feeders. I can use a TDS value on my Phalaenopsis up to 500 and it doesn't do them any harm at all. However, it would need to be adjusted, and does get adjusted, for the time of year, because with the low light levels in the winter and the cooler temperatures in my kitchen, apart from when I'm cooking, they're going to slow right up. If they slow right up, they don't need a feed like that. So whereas in this growing season they might get 3 feeds and a flush, in the winter they'll get quite a low feed followed by a flush. There's no point in pouring feed into the pot if the plant can't use it, because it's not growing. Feed growth. When there's growth, and you can see new leaves pushing on, new roots with growing root tips, apply some feed. But apply it logically to the rate. The rate of growth is high, middle of the growing season, everything is going a bit mad, well, you can keep the feed level up a bit. Not so much in the winter time. So, as I've said, these are, in this country, I would call them medium light lovers, medium towards high. And I say that because in the UK, for 2/3 of the year, we do not get good light levels. It's called spring, autumn and winter. The light levels during those seasons in the UK are not good enough. they're too low, and they're often too short. So give them good light during those seasons, yeah? And in the height of the season, pull them back a bit. And for goodness sake, go steady with the sunshine through your windows. My daughter Hannah has just burnt 4 of her Phalaenopsis quite badly, to such an extent that 1 or 2 might even be lost. For one day, she forgot to move them away from the window when she went to work. Now you have to bear in mind she goes to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:15 in the morning, to get there for 4. It's pitch dark. It's not the sort of thing you think about, how warm the sun's going to be and whether it's going to come in through the window. So burnt leaves, that's not recoverable. The burn marks, the damage done, cannot be recovered. You just hope that the plant itself can be recovered. So watch the sunshine. They will take early morning sun from the east. They will take some late evening sun from the west. And anything between the two is probably too much. So there we go. That's my guide to Phalaenopsis. There's a lot in there. With any luck, you might need to watch it 2 or 3 times, which will do the channel the world of good. He says, hoping. But yeah, they are very rewarding plants with some basic knowledge. Most people can look after them reasonably sensibly. I worked out why a lot of good growers don't grow them so well, because they grow them in their greenhouses. And then you go around there and you have a chat and they say, hang on just a minute, I've got to water my plants. And they get a hose and they go whoosh all over their plants. Well, these do not like that. They don't like being covered in water with the water going down in the crown and the leaf joints. They don't like it. Especially if that water is cold. Doesn't do them any good at all. And then they wonder why they die. Oh, I can't keep these, they just don't last long for me. Yeah, I could tell you why. So go steady. Don't get the leaf joints and the crown wet. If you're going to spray your plants for a bit of extra humidity, which you can read in a lot of places is recommended, do it early in the day so that towards the late afternoon it's dry. And they don't go into the night when the temperature does that, wet, because that's where the harm will happen. So there we go, Phalaenopsis. Well worth growing, I believe. I haven't got a huge number. I had 8 on the kitchen windowsill. My last visit to Burnham's, I had to come home with something, didn't I? If I come home from an orchid show and an orchid nursery without anything in a bag to show you good people, you'd all clear off somewhere else, wouldn't you? So I had to come home with something, and 2 of the somethings I came home with were Phalaenopsis, mass-produced Phalaenopsis from the EU in bloom at reasonable prices. And although those prices have dramatically gone up since the Brexit saga, prior to Brexit you could buy a 2-spike Phalaenopsis in a decorative pot in one of your home-based things, you know, your DIY type places, for £8. And then Brexit came along and suddenly there was a lot of paperwork and cost to getting those mass-produced Phalaenopsis over into this country for sale. So up went the prices. And since then the prices have increased over and over again, not because of Brexit, but because of the costs of producing them. The energy, the fertilizers, all of the production costs, wages, everything has gone up. So the plants' prices have gone up as well. Don't blame those EU mass producers on greed. They run at the tightest margins you can possibly imagine. Now, although it's 2 or 3 years ago I had inside information, it's not what you know, it's who you know, that they were producing these Phalaenopsis at €3 each. That's how much it cost them to get them to the door. And then from the door they had things like transport started adding its cost in, market sales, transport, warehousing, changing countries. All these sort of costs came over and above what it costs to get them in a pot with the flowers to the door on the nursery. €3. But that was a few years ago. It's probably rocketed up now. It's probably 4. Might even be 5. But they produce them, you know, in such large numbers, mass produced, automation, all that sort of stuff. To get them to us, to enable us to have an orchid collection relatively cheaply on our windowsills and in our homes. Don't knock it. These are perfectly viable orchids, very attractive. Some are fragrant, not many. Some have patterned leaves, some have variegated leaves, and if you venture into the species, good luck trying to find them, but if you venture into the species, you will have more delicate plants that are far more susceptible to the variations in their cultural requirements. They need to be more precise than these that have been bred to be very easygoing. So there you go. That's my first back to basics orchid. I hope it wasn't too complicated, and I hope I've done a brain dump, and everything I know about Phalaenopsis is in this video, so it's now available to you. So what I know, you now know. You might have to watch it a couple of times, and that's good for the channel. But yeah, it's all in there. It's all in there somewhere. I'm not a scripter, I don't script my videos, so there's no orderly sequence to what I've said. It comes out as I think of it, but I would imagine it's all in there somewhere. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Now, things to come. These can be orderly. It's Thursday today. Friday is not the 8th, but it's the 7th. And the 8th is Saturday and I'm out all day. So Friday the 7th will be everything in bud, spike and bloom a day early. Yeah? So that's your video for tomorrow. It's going to be a short one. I mean, I can see out the corner of my eye there really isn't much. There isn't anything behind me or over here. It's all over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly 8, so it's not going to be a long video. Saturday I'm out all day. You will get sometime after Saturday, probably next week, a view of my friend Alan's grow spaces and his orchids, because on Saturday I will be getting there early enough to film prior to the hordes arriving and filling up his grow space where you can't even get in the door. So I will get that done so that you good people get to see somebody else's orchid collection. And there might not be much in bloom, I can't guarantee that. It is the growing season after all. But I will get that filmed on Saturday and you will get that later in the week. I will try and do a Sunday chat the best I can, but Hannah is down for the weekend. I will do what I can. We will probably do some work in the garden, and there'll be some videos on the other channel relating to that. So those are the sorts of things that are coming up. And I still have my list that you good people suggested and then voted on. And this one got a lot of votes, back to basics. It was undefined and undescribed. It was just simply back to basics. So it was left to me to decide how to do it and what to do. And as I said, I've decided to do it like a genus at a time or along those lines, and you know, just have a look at how the plants grow, what I've got, how well mine are doing, the good ones, the bad ones, all that sort of thing. I won't be doing them too frequently or I'll run out. But we will get another one in the not too distant future. Which one I'm going to do next, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So there we go. And on the Sunday chat, I've got something a bit special to tell you. And it's not anything to do with a cat. Anything special that I mention, everybody thinks, oh, he's got a cat. No, he hasn't. However, for those of you who like to go outside into the open spaces and look up, we've got some pretty special stuff coming up, depending on where in the world you live. And for once, the UK is getting a good bit. I will go over that at a later date. But mark in your diary the 12th. It's important. Anyway, that's it for today. I bet this has been going on far too long. Use my battery up. Yeah, another long one. Sorry about that. Some people like the long ones. Some people bail out halfway through. This is just life, the universe and things. I don't mind either way. But it would be nice if you're not subscribed to actually do so. Costs nothing. It's a tick box. Yeah? So it doesn't affect you in any other way. It affects me and the channel. Don't forget the thumbs up. That's important. And if you haven't used your hype yet this week, it's getting on a bit. You got the new ones on Monday. You know, it's Thursday now. I use mine on Monday or Tuesday and get mine done. 3 a week. I always use them. I think it's important for YouTube to do something for the smaller channels that they're not making any money out of. There's a novelty. Anyway, thanks for dropping by. Hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.